Well, good afternoon. Now we will talk about, just proceed further. Write down, there are two types of social influence. First one is called there are two types of social influence. First, conformity. Now write down firstly, conformity is a process in which conformity is a process in which conformity is a process in which we change our behavior because of the indirect influence in bracket you can write real or imagined indirect influence, real or imagined bracket close, of other people or group. Other people or group. So this is how we can define conformity. The idea is that conformity is a process. First of all, it is an indirect process. Nobody is trying to change your behavior directly. It is indirect process in the sense that people do something and we naturally have a tendency to start doing something according to that. This influence can be real sometimes, that somebody can actually try to change our behavior. It can be imagined also, that nobody is trying to change our behavior but nevertheless we change. That is what we call the conformity in a way. Conformity, as we will see shortly, is a very natural human process. Just think of it. Suppose, for example, you are in a lecture hall. You are listening to a lecture, can say, of a person in a big auditorium. 500 people are there in that auditorium. And suppose, for example, you don't like this person, this lecturer at all. You are a big critique of that person. You do not like him personally, his character, his behavior, his approach, his speech, his style, his ideas. You are a big critique of that person in every possible manner. Just somehow in compulsion, you have to, suppose, attend that lecture. So you are just, you can say, waiting somewhere in the corner, listening to that lecture, waiting for the lecture to be over and leave the auditorium. Then suddenly, suppose, for example, well, after half an hour, lecture is over. Now everybody else in the lecture hall, they are big fan of that person. So everybody starts clapping that person loudly. That's what we do in the public lecture. So everybody starts clapping that person loudly. You don't feel like clapping at all. You are not impressed. Such a bakwas lecture, such a boring lecture it was. You don't feel like clapping at all. But remember, you are sitting somewhere, everybody around you is clapping very loudly to that person. Now in such a situation, what will be your behavior? Well, if you are a normal person, like most of us, then even if you do not feel like clapping that person for that person, then then also you will start. You will not clap like this one, but you may start clapping like this one. At least you pretend that you are clapping. So if you do so, then you are confirming. You don't feel like doing it, but nevertheless you do it. So if you do so, that it will be conformity. And suppose, for example, you are a person who says that no, I am not going to clap for this person. Well, his lecture is not something impressive for me. So if you do not like clapping in that case, if you do not clap in that case, sitting quietly, you will feel it will become very difficult for you. That it will appear that everybody carried around you. So you will start feeling some sort of embarrassment. You will start feeling a little change in your temperature of your body. You may start perspiring a little. If you do all of that, that is because of the non-conformity. The idea is that conformity is a natural process and non-conformity is an attempt. Non-conformity is a little difficult for us to do that. When we try to do something other than what others are doing around us, then we feel a little uncomfortable, we will feel a little embarrassed in that situation. Conformity is that process. Now, before we proceed further, let me see that there is a question, is that relevant or not? is there? Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, if anyone becomes a criminal, can we say that he became because of bad situation? So, if situation defines good and bad, is it ethical to punish them as they become criminal, not because of their constitution factor rather than a situational factor? There can be two answers to that question. First of all, you can say you can see that punishment itself may be a part of the situation. So that's still, so punishment is a part of the situation. Situation gives us a punishment. So we get punishment in some situation. So if you smoke in can say a classroom, for example, then you may get punishment here. So that punishment is part of the situation itself. So sometimes it can be important that. But again, we are not against punishment as well. Punishment also, we are not saying that constitution factors are totally irrelevant. We see here that even those criminals, for example, they may become saint when they are in a temple. We are not saying that there is something bad into them. If you change that situation, what made them bad, then perhaps we can convert them into a good people as well. So that is the basic idea. We are not saying that punishment should not be. Punishment can be a part of the situation itself. But to see that they are constitutionally bad people, that may be a little objectionable from this point of view. No, there is nothing called bad people. We can change them into good also, put them into good situation, change their situation maybe. Isn't it? But punishment is necessary. Punishment can be a part of the situation itself. Isn't it? So, that could be answer. So, that is how we define conformity now. Change the paragraph, then after write further. There is a special type of conformity. There is a special type of conformity, and change the line, then after write further, normative conformity. Normative conformity. Now write down a few lines. Vidisha Sarkar, sir, is constitutional factor and constitutional moral same? Well, when we say constitutional factor, Vidisha, then I'm not talking about Indian constitution as such. We are talking about our constitution, our biological constitution, psychological constitution, moral constitution. Biological constitution like our hormones, etc. Psychological constitution like our impulse, etc. And moral constitution like our morality. So, and when we say constitutional morality, then we are talking about normally Indian constitution. This constitution is not about Indian constitution, it is our constitution. Biological, psychological, moral, etc. Now, in this one, write down further. Every group has a set of norms . Every group has a set of norms of accepted behavior, a set of norms of accepted behavior which every member, a set of norms of accepted behavior which every member is required to follow. Which every member is required to follow. Those people, write down further, those people who do not follow these norms are initially ridiculed. Those people who do not follow these norms are initially ridiculed, comma, slowly isolated, and may finally be even expelled from the group. And may finally be even expelled from the group. Normative conformity is a process in which we change our behavior Normative conformity is a process in which we change our behavior just because we want to remain or become a member of that group. Just because we want to remain or become a member of that group. So this is how we can define a normative conformity. The idea here is that, as we have seen from this line again, these lines, that normative conformity first of all is a group phenomena. It happens when we are a member of a group. Suppose for example, there is a group like this. Every group has a set of norms that every member is expected to follow. Now suppose for example that those people who follow every single norm of a group, they become the core member of that group. Every group has a core member and the peripheral member. That is a core member and that way. Suppose for example there is a person called A. Now suppose he is a core member of a group. Now suppose for example he follows every norm initially maybe, but suppose for example he stops following those norms. He starts doing something very different from that norm. What will happen? Well, people may initially ridicule him. People may often, you can say initially mock him, make fun of him, pass sarcastic comment against him. So that may happen initially. Suppose for example, this group can be as simple as, say, a group of students, a friend circle, and it can be as important as an organization like bureaucracy, for example. So so let's take that example of those friend circles. Suppose this is a group of a small young students, a friend circle. Now norm in that group is that everybody, when they meet together for some informal gathering, then everybody wears a extremely casual dress, like t-shirt, or you can say the jeans, that torn jeans that children often wear, or chappal or something like that, very extremely casual dress. But this, suppose one person, he always wears a formal dress like tie, suit, hat, formal shoes, always. Now what will be position of that person? Well, initially people will laugh at him, you can say mock him, make fun of him, ridicule him. Suppose for example everybody is you can say enjoying the room, suddenly he enters the room. People will look at him and say that, well, Sahab has come now. Now we are the old people, we are just like this again, he is a Sahab, he is a big person. People will make fun of him by calling him Sahab or something like this. Now being target of such fun, such you can say ridicule, is not easy for most of us for most of the time to handle beer. So even if this person does not like to wear the casual dress, but in that groups of friends, he will start wearing the casual dress. This is what we call her. So he will change his behavior. But if he does not do that, what will happen? Slowly he might be isolated in his group. He will feel alienated. People may stop talking to him. He himself may feel a little uncomfortable with those people. At one point of time, he may be thrown out of the group also, or he may leave the group himself as well, because he will start feeling so uncomfortable in that group. On the other hand, suppose there is another person called B. He is an outsider initially, but suppose he wants to become a member of that group. Now, first thing that he will do is that he will start following these norms. And once he starts following those norms, then he will start feeling himself a little closer to that group psychologically. And at one point of time, he might get entry into that group, and then after, well, he might become, well, core member of that group also very soon. So That is how it is. So normative conformity is a process in which we change our behavior according to these norms just because we want to remain a member of that group like A, or we want to become a member of that group like B. So according to the group, we change our behavior. You can see many such examples here. Suppose for example, this group that I am talking about, it is a political party like the BJP for example. Now, suppose there is an opposition leader, he wants to become a member of BJP. Now, do you know what is the first thing that he has to do? Well, first thing that he will do is that he will start tweeting in favor of you can say praising Modi and Amit Shah. Modi and Shah are the core of BJP today. So if he does so, he will feel himself closer and others also closer to that group. At one point of time, he can become a member of BJP, and after that, depending on how strongly he follows the norm, he might become the core member of BJP also. Takes any example, Hemant Biswa Sarma for example, Suvendu Adhikari for example. So when he was with Suvendu Adhikari, when he was with the TMC for example, then well, so strongly he used to criticize BJP. But once he joined the BJP, then after you can see just how he became the opposite of that. He started criticizing Mamata Banerjee as strongly, vehemently as he used to do the otherwise. Can say Hemant Biswa Sarma. Look at his tweet before he joined Congress, BJP, when he was a member of Congress party, and during the time when he wanted to leave Congress and become BJP member, and after he became the BJP member. So just look at the three conditions when he was outsider, trying to become the insider, and became the insider. You can see the change in their behavior so significantly, so drastically there. Normative conformity is that process in which we change our behavior because we want to remain a member of a group like B for example, or we want to become a member of, like A for example, and become a member of that group like B here. That process is called the normative conformity. Now, there are some important characteristics of normative conformity that has been identified. Write down further. In this normative conformity, or rather, 1 minute, this happens because of our desire to be, liked, accepted, or to gain approval. It occurs because of our desire to be liked, accepted, or to gain approval. So, why does normative conformity happen? Well, main reason of normative conformity is that it happens because we all have a very strong internal desire to be liked by other people, to be accepted by other people, to gain approval of other people. That is the main reason for which people often conform. Just think of it. After posting a photograph on your Facebook page, for example, or Instagram, for example, do you count the number of likes that you got there? Well, all of you must be counting that. If you do so, then you are being subjected to the normative conformity pressure. Suppose, for example, you post two photographs. One photograph gets on your Facebook or Instagram. Suppose one photograph gets 10 likes and the second photograph gets 500 likes. Now, next time, which type of photograph would you more likely to post there? Well, almost all of you will post more like the 500 photograph, liked photograph, viewed photograph than the 10. So 500 people, by liking your photograph, they have actually changed your opinion about in which pose or in which photograph you look good. Conformity is that. So it occurs because we want to be accepted by other people, approved by other people, liked by other people. That is the basic motivation for conformity as a process, number one. Further, write down. In this public compliance, often takes place without necessarily having private acceptance. without necessarily having the private acceptance. Without necessarily having private acceptance. We confirm even if, write down further, we confirm even if we may not necessarily believe in these norms. Now, that is a second important thing that defines the conformity. The idea here is that in this case public compliance means actual behavior is shown. Behavior happens, there may not be internal belief. So, external behavior is more important. People comply publicly more strongly than internally, privately believing in that. So, for example, all the BJP leaders in the country may not actually believe internally that Narendra Modi is the Vishwa Guru, greatest leader in the universe. And then also they will publicly say so. All the leaders of the Congress party may not internally believe that Rahul Gandhi is the greatest leader that they have, but they will say so or publicly in a way. So, public behavior is more important. Internal belief is not something that matters more in that case. That is the second important characteristics of the normative conformity. And the third, another important one is, write down further, it is often a sign of personal weakness. It is often a sign of personal weakness. So, that is the next important thing. The idea is that normative conformity often is a sign of personal weakness of the individual. That people who conform are normally weak people. Strong people, as you will see later on, are the ones who change the norm rather than to conform to it. So, these are the three important defining characteristics that, well, defines normative conformity as a unique type of conformity process. Now, in order to understand this process, I will give you some some of the extreme examples of conformity. We have seen some extreme example of social influence earlier, like Holocaust or Heaven's Gate or Burari family, etc. Let's take some conformity such example and all. One example that I often like to talk about is a series of events that started happening in early 90s in Brazil. So, in Brazil, this event was known as the train surfing. It was known as train surfing. Now, what happened in train surfing? Now, in train surfing, what used to happen that some young middle teenage children, around 15, 16 or 17-year-old children, middle teenage. Now, they sometimes secretly they used to ride on the roof of the train, secretly because it was illegal. So, secretly they used to ride on the roof of the train, and when the train started moving at a very high speed, then they used to stand on the train and spread their hand like this one, that Titanic pose, you know. And when the cool breeze used to touch them, then they used to get a lot of thrill and excitement in that. Now, it was very thrilling, of course, it was very exciting, of course, but it was very dangerous also. Why so? Because engineers in India are more intelligent, you know, because when they make the flyovers, etc., of a railway track, then they make the flyover high enough to accommodate the people on the roof also. Well, that's not very uncommon in India, but in Brazil, well, engineers are not that far sighted. So, they make the flyover or overbridge, etc., just above the roof of the train. So, when these trains went under a flyover, under a, can say, overbridge, inside a cave, for example, and these children were standing, they used to collide with that and they used to fall and died on the spot. Sometimes their death was more tragic. Suppose, for example, they are standing there and suddenly they touch the high tension wire above them and they used to burn to death, electrocuted and burned to death. Sometimes their death was even more tragic. Suppose they are standing and some cross wire used to pass there. That wire used to hurt their neck and they were beheaded there. So, every year hundreds of students, young students used to die in similar incidents. Now, and it was highly reported case in the media. Every day, the front page of the newspaper, it was published that today 3 students died, today 2 students died, today you can say 5 students died. Highly reported case in the media. But even then, every day, day by day, the instances of train surfing kept on increasing. Now, people were quite surprised what happened to these children. Why is it that they are putting their own life at, they know that how dangerous it is. But why is it that they are putting their own life at risk in that situation? Now, there were some psychologists who tried to study this phenomena. Now, what they did, they first of all observed that most of these children belong to a certain chain of a school there in Brazil. So, that is the first important thing that they found. Then after they found, when they went to those schools, then it was found that in those schools, those children who had done train surfing even once, they were considered to be the hero of the group. Now, being hero of a group was such a strong, you can say, motivation for the children that they sometimes put even their own life at risk in order to be called hero in their group among their friends. That was normative conformity. So, these people were, so this being hero, because what makes you hero? Other people's approval makes you hero. So, whenever you are doing something just in order to gain approval of other people, then you are actually confirming normatively in these cases. It can be that powerful that can make people to kill themselves also, put their own life also at risk like this in order to get the approval of other people. Many young students, for example, you know that in the schools and college, many young students start smoking because of that reason as well. They started smoking for that reason as well. Suppose, for example, you have taken admission in a college. Now, there is of course, in new college, nobody knows you initially. Now, suppose, for example, there is a group of students, you want to make a friendship with those group. Now, realize that everybody in that group is smoking. Now, in order to feel closer to those people, you may start smoking yourself. That will bring you closer to them. At one point of time, you can become accepted by them. After that, well, till this time you get addicted, and then after that, conformity pressure will still keep on acting on you. Because of that, so majority of the students who smoke in school and college, they all know that it is dangerous. Internal belief may not be there, but still they will do it to show to the people, yes, I am grown up, I am no longer a child now. That is a conformity pressure further. So, a number of such behavior, you can say train surfing, smoking, many dangerous selfie behavior, peer pressure, etc. All of them are the examples of conformity, normative conformity in that sense. That is how we can see normative conformity as a process. Now, in order to understand the normative conformity, a very important research was conducted at Yale University. A very important research was conducted at Yale University by a psychologist called Solomon Asch. Solomon Asch. His experiment was one of the first experiment in this area that led to the thought. Hannah Arendt was the philosophical study first perhaps, but there was a study of one individual. But Solomon Asch was a general experiment conducted in the psychology field that had gave to a way how to experiment these things, scientifically understand the process. So, let us briefly talk about the Solomon Asch experiment that will possibly help us to understand what this process is and how can we conceptualize or understand that. Now, I am portraying you a situation. Try to imagine yourself in that situation. Suppose, for example, you are a senior student of Yale University. Now, one day, this professor, a senior professor of Yale University, Solomon Asch, he comes to you and he asks you that, yes, in my lab, I am conducting an experiment on perceptual judgment, and he requests you to become a volunteer of that experiment. You say, okay sir, I will do that. You know, students have many motivations to volunteer in such experiment. First of all, you get some unique experience there. Your name is published in the manual, but most importantly, you get paid heavily. So many students keep on looking for that opportunity to participate in such experiments to earn some extra pocket money. So you say, okay sir, I will do that. Then after date and venue of the experiment is fixed. Now you reach the venue of the experiment on time. Now suppose for example, venue of the experiment is a room like this one. So in the empty room, now in the middle of the room, suppose there is a round table like this. There is a round table. Now on this round table in a semicircle, suppose 8 chairs are there and 7 people are already sitting on those 7 chairs, 8th one is empty. 7 people are sitting. So suppose these are the 7 people, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So these 7 people are sitting on this chair. You are the last one and you are made to sit on this chair H. Last one. Now 8 people are now sitting in a semicircle, you being the last one. Now suppose for example, the experimenter tells all of you there that I am going out for 2 minutes, please introduce yourself, you have to experiment together. That is normal courtesy. So saying that he leaves the room and you introduce, all of you introduce yourself, your name, etc., etc. After 2-3 minutes, that experimenter comes to you and he tells all of you that let's start with the experiment now. Ready? Yes, ready. Now experiment is something like this one. Suppose you are, imagine you are sitting in the middle of the room in a semicircle. In front of you there is a board like this, clean board, empty board. And you are told by the people that look at this board very carefully. Now so all of you are looking at the board. Suddenly in the middle of the board, suppose a square appears. And in the middle of that square, suppose there is a vertical line is there. All of you are asked to look at this line very carefully. You looked at it for very carefully, 30 seconds or 45 seconds time is given to you to look at it, to observe it. After that, suddenly this square disappears and suppose it is replaced by a rectangle like this. In this rectangle, suppose there are 4 lines are there, 4 vertical lines are there. So there is a rectangle like this one. In this rectangle, suppose there are 4 vertical lines are there. And your task is to identify that out of these 4 vertical lines, tell me which line is closest in length to the original line that you saw earlier. What is the right answer, by the way? 2. Anybody who is not sleeping or who is not drunk will give the right answer. So suppose I ask this first person what is the right answer, he says 2 is the right answer. Second person, 2 is the right answer. Third person, 2 is the right answer. Fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh, all the 7 people give the right answer, 2. Your turn is last one, you also say that 2 is the right answer. First trial is over. Second trial happens. Second trial is also so simple that everybody gives the right answer and you also give the right answer. Third trial, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 trial like this happens. Everybody gives the right answer, you also give the right answer. By this time you are quite relaxed. That's such a simple task it is. What a heavy word he was using, perceptual judgment and all. So it is a very simple task. You are just waiting for the experiment to be over, take your money and get out. But suddenly that critical trial happens. In that critical trial, suppose I am the experimenter. When I ask that first person what is the right answer, suppose he says that 1 is the right answer, which is obviously wrong. But A says 1 is the right answer. You are slightly, it's like this, what happened? So I ask the second person B, suppose he also gives the wrong answer, 1. C also gives the wrong answer, 1. D also gives the wrong answer, 1. Now by this time you are quite surprised, you are shocked, what happened? Always they were all right just now, what happened to them? You are slightly tense, what's happening? You are looking at the line, you are looking at other people there. So you are just thinking what's happening, what's happening. The fourth person, fifth, E, F, G, all of them gave the wrong answer, 1. Last is your turn. Imagine yourself in that situation. Suppose for example, well, 7 people are surrounding you in a semicircle. All of them have given the wrong answer, and all of them are, suppose for example, staring at you like this with a very serious face. So 7 people are staring at you like very serious face. In such a situation, what do you think? What would you give what answer would you give, 1 or 2? Many students in my class say, sir, I will still say 2, because 2 is the right answer, obviously. But do you realize, can you imagine that in the real experiment when it was conducted, how many people gave the wrong answer? Well, in the actual experiment that was conducted then, almost 88% people who participated in that experiment, well, they gave the wrong answer. And remember, these students were not the poor and you can say superstitious, weak people living in some remote corner of tribal society, etc. No, they were all the senior students of Yale University. So in the senior students of Yale University also it was found that 88% people gave the wrong answer just because 7 people had already given the wrong answer and they were staring at them, putting a pressure on them in that manner. An interesting thing was that after that experiment, when these people were interviewed and asked that did you actually think that one is the right answer, almost all of them said that no, I knew that perhaps it was wrong. But even then I decided to go with everybody because everybody had done the same thing. That is how powerful conformity could be. We know that others are wrong, but then also you may do it just because everybody else is doing that. Solomon Asks proved here in that experiment that within 20 minutes of that experiment, he was able to create 88% of the conformity among the young people of Yale University. Human beings are that conforming. That is how we can demonstrate the conformity in an experiment like this. Now, next we will talk about what are the factors that influence conformity, which was in that case manipulated by Solomon Asch. Let us briefly talk about those factors also. Write down further. Factors influencing conformity. Factors influencing conformity. Some important factors we will mention here, we will try to talk about here. First one, write down importance of the group. Importance of the group. Write down further. If we consider the group as very important for us, comma, we like and respect its members, we like and respect its members, and want to gain their approval at any cost, then we are more likely to conform. Then we are more likely to conform. So that is the first important thing, that how important we think that group is, because we are member of many groups, starting from family first group, neighborhood, school, college, university, friend circle, organization, office, workplace. So we are member of many groups in our life. Caste group, religious group, well, social media, WhatsApp group. We are member of many groups in our life. Out of these groups, some group we consider as more important for us than some other group. And some groups are more important, some groups are less. How important you think that group is for you will determine how much how much conformity we will be able to show there. So that is the how important that we think that group is for us will determine. So if you think that family is more important for you, then your conformity towards your family norm will be stronger. If you think caste is more important for you, then your conformity towards your caste will be stronger. Religion more important for you, your conformity towards religious norm will be stronger. So whichever group you think is most important for you, well, people will conform. I have seen many people in my area where I live in Delhi, that they are so proud of their caste group identity, etc., that on their bike, for example, number plate of their bike, they write the name of their caste, Gurjar, Jat, Rajput, or on the windshield of their car, they write it in bold letters, Brahman, Rajput, Gurjar, Jat, etc. And after they write the name, then after numbers are not important in the bike. Caste name itself is enough. So some people are very particular about their caste, they're proud of their caste identity. So that is something that will create a conformity to the caste norm, religious norm, etc., etc. Now this has an important implication for some groups in a way. Write down further. This has an important implication for those groups. This has an important implication for those groups which are made to form important policy decisions, which are made to form important policy decisions, which are made to form important policy decisions. And what is that implication? Write down further. All the members of such a group, all the members of such a group should not be, all the members of such a group should not be very close friends of each other, should not be very close friends of each other, because in that case the pressure of conformity will be, because in that case the pressure of conformity will be very high on each of them, pressure of conformity will be very high on each of them, comma, not much discussion will happen, not much discussion will happen, not much discussion will happen, and the quality of decision would be low. And the quality of decision would be low. So this is what we mean here. Idea here is that, suppose for example, there is a group like this one. Suppose there is a group like this one, and this group has 5 members, say A, B, C, D, and E. There are 5 members, and suppose this group has to make some important policy decision about the country, about the organization, and suppose all of them are very good friends of each other. Now, is that a good group for that purpose? Of course not. Why not? Because suppose for example, when this group is sitting together to take a decision what policy we should make. Now suppose A makes a proposal. The moment he will make a proposal, everybody else will agree with that person, the A, the boss, and there won't be any decision, because for any decision a discussion will have to happen, somebody has to be contrarian. So everybody will agree no discussion will happen, and since no discussion will happen, the quality of not much scrutiny will happen, quality of decision would be low. So that is why I can say it is an interesting thing to see that when somebody who is very close to us, for example, very close friends, then Well, when somebody very close to us asks us to do something, then it's very difficult for us often to say no to that person. You must have seen, suppose for example, one of your very close friend comes to you once and he tells you, okay, let's go and watch a new film that has been released last week. You know that this film is a very boring film, complete wastage of time and money. You tell your friend initially that no, I am not going with you, it is a very bad film. But your friend insists upon that, no, you will have to go, you will have to go. Now at the end of it, you keep on cribbing in your mind that yes, it will complete wastage of time and money, but still you will go with your friend. Do you do that? If you do so, then you are actually confirming in that case. It is difficult for us to say no to a person whom we like a lot. So that is where you can see. So this is what is that implication. Take a practical example. Suppose in this Lok Sabha in India, 17th Lok Sabha or 16th Lok Sabha also, previous one, the main opposition party, the Congress party in the parliament, it did not get even 10% of the seats in the parliament, which is the technical requirement of, well, claiming the post of the leader of opposition. That is a technical requirement. But still there was a demand within and outside the Lok Sabha that the leader of the Congress party should be given the post of the leader of opposition, which they did not fulfill the technical requirement of. But then also there was a demand. Now the question is that do you think that this demand was justified? Well, perhaps many of you will say yes. Why so? Well, this might be one of the reason. Reason is that the leader of opposition, importance of the post of the leader of opposition is that leader of opposition is that first of all, leader of opposition has a well, cabinet rank, authority is there, and then after many committees that are made by the government to make some important appointments in the country, like for example appointment of CAG, CVC, CIC, CBI director, etc., EC, election commission, etc. Well, leader of opposition is always a de facto member of that committee. De facto member of that committee. So, suppose for example, if this committee has to make an appointment of CAG, and suppose all the members are the BJP members, then do you think that this is a good group for that purpose? Of course not. It is a bad group for that purpose. Why it is a bad group? Well, in this case, suppose for example, well, if high command, first person, if high command makes a decision, then every members will simply say yes. So in this situation, at least one person should be there, like D, for example, who can be opposition, not a good friend of others. So when he makes a proposal, then these three people may agree with him, but this person will disagree. Now there will be a debate. These four people will try to convince him, and he will try to convince other people. There will be debate, there will be discussion, there will be much stronger scrutiny, and out of that higher scrutiny, debate and discussion, better decision will come out. This is what our theory essentially tells us. So this is the first thing. This is the point factor here, and that is the implication of that factor. First important thing. Second important thing, write down unanimity. Unanimity. Write down further. If every member of the group confirms, if every member of the group confirms, then the pressure of conformity is very high on each of them. Then the pressure of conformity is very high on each of them. But if even a single member disconfirms, but if even a single member disconfirms and breaks the unanimity, then this pressure reduces on everyone if a single member disconfirms and breaks unanimity, then this pressure is reduced on everyone. So this is the next important thing, another very important factor, how unanimous the group is in the conformity again. If everybody follows the norm, then we feel a strong pressure to follow the norm. And if even a single member disconfirms and go against the group and does something different, then this pressure is reduced on everyone equally significantly. I will remind you of the example, a case that we had discussed, a research that we have discussed in our earlier class. Try to recall in which class and in which topic did we talk about that. Now, there was a psychologist researcher, what he did, he studied first of all the cases solved by the Supreme Court of America from 1954 to 2006, in which he tried to find out that which judgment was most or least likely. Like for example, 10-0 or 9-1 or 8-2 or 7-3 or 6-4, 5-5 maybe. Which judgment will be most likely? I hope you remember that in that class we had seen that 10-0 will be most likely judgment and 9-1 would be least likely judgment. I hope you remember we have discussed that in our self-confidence class earlier. So in that class I had told you that this person must be very high in self-confidence. We had seen there that unanimous judgments are most likely. So everybody doing the same thing creates strong pressure on us to do the same thing. For the first person to go against a majority of 9 is normally very difficult. This is how we define one important definition of self-confidence. Self-confidence is your ability to express unpopular opinion. This is the most unpopular opinion, 1 against 9. So that's very difficult to do. But if one person goes against the majority of 9, then he reduces pressure on all others. For the second person to go against the majority of 8 becomes a little easier. Third person more easy. Fourth person even more easier. Then after, well, it becomes a norm. Nobody bothers about that. They are going against or in favor of that. So this is what we have. So in that class we have talked about it. We have studied that with reference to the self-confidence, and here we can see the same thing from the conformity pressure point of view. So the unanimous decisions are most likely, and 9-1 type of decision are least likely. They are the most difficult decisions normally in a can say case. So idea here is that if you want to make a confirming group, then well, maintain unanimity under all conditions. Do not allow anybody to, well, violate the norm. Anybody who violates the law, strong punishment should be given to that person. But if you want to make a non-conforming group, then, well, at least put one person like that one, well, to go against. The moment one person goes against the norm, other people start thinking more independently, and they are less likely to conform after that. So that is the second thing that we can do here. Now, before we proceed further, let me take, I think there is a question which might be relevant here. There was a question, sir, what is the spiral of silence theory in social influence and mass communication? Anil Kumar Roy. Anil Kumar Roy, this is where you can understand spiral of silence. If the silence becomes norm, then, well, more and more people who are otherwise vocal will remain silent in that situation. So, if you want to make a culture of silence, then, well, punish any vocal person. Maintain unanimity in that case. But if you want to make a culture of protest, for example, then allow some people to go against the norm. Because if some people, if one person goes against the norm, then others people are more likely to break the norm. So spiral of silence means silence becoming a norm, in which it becomes more and more. So more and more vocal people coming in that situation start becoming silent more and more. That is what we can call spiral of silence. Next question, Biswajit. So in group of sheep, they flow each other, and we see the man also. Then what the difference between man and a sheep? Exactly, Biswajit, we are like sheep. Yes, conformity is basically like a sheep-like behavior of man. Yes, you are right. That is the second important factor. Third factor is called, write down, size of the group. Second factor is, third factor rather, size of the group. Write down further. If the size of the group increases from 2 to 7, then conformity normally increases. But after that it remains more or less constant. Constant. So this type of curve has been found with normative conformity y-axis and size of the group x-axis. Now it is seen, this experiment that I talked about here, in that ideal experiment that I talked about, the 7 people were there and you were the 8th one. But it was repeated with the 2 people also. Suppose, for example, when you entered the room of the experiment, one person was there, you were the second one. It was found that conformity was very low. Suppose 2 people were there and you were the third one, conformity was higher. 4 people, conformity was higher. 5 people, more conformity. 6 people, more conformity. 7 people, it became almost 88. And then after, well, it was repeated up to 30 people also. It did not change much. After that, it remained more or less same. So this type of curve has been found between the conformity y-axis and size of the group x-axis. Now this curve has 2 important implications, as you can see from this. First implication is that smaller groups are less conforming and larger groups are more conforming. So we often say that 5 can be an ideal size of a good group, 5 plus minus 1. So if less than 5 is the number of size of the group, then we will not have enough diversity of opinion that can, well, weaken us, that will make us poorer in our opinion bank in a way. But if it is more than 5, 6 maybe, then either it will become more conforming, no discussion will happen, or chaotic, only discussion will happen, no decision will happen. So larger groups become conforming, or can say chaotic, smaller groups become less diverse. 5 and 6 is considered to be an ideal size of a group, number 1. Smaller groups are more conforming, less conforming, larger groups are more. A second implication of this curve is also that in every group, however large the group can be, there are some people normally, like 12% people in that case, well, who never confirm. They are the people, they are the naysayers in a way. They often say no to others. Such people play a very important role in the life of a group, as we will see shortly. So that is the third important factor that influences the conformity. And then finally, fourth factor is, write down, culture. Culture. Now this experiment that I talked about, where 88% conformity was achieved, was done in America. Imagine a situation, had the same experiment been done in a country like India, what do you think? Conformity would have been same, more or less? Well, chances are high that conformity might have been much more. India is a more conforming culture. Culture also plays a role in conformity. Write down a few lines. In a collectivist culture, like India, where the groups like the family, caste, religion, community, etc., community, etc., are considered as more important than the individual, conformity is comparatively is high. Conformity is high. Conformity is high. But in an individualistic culture, like the US or Western Europe, where individuals are considered as more important than the group, conformity is slightly less. Conformity is slightly less. So, in terms of conformity, now we can see that there are two types of culture. Collectivist culture, India is a good example of that. India, East Asia, etc. So, collectivist culture is the one in which the groups like, for example, family in India, caste, religion, community, etc. are considered as more important and individuals are considered as less important. Individualistic culture, on the other hand, like US, Western Europe, etc., individuals are more important in those cultures and groups are considered to be less important. So, because of that, conformity will be a little less in that case. Individuals matter more than the group. But in our country, for example, you know that groups are considered to be so important that we all are expected to often change ourselves according to the group norm, make sacrifice for the sake of our family, caste, religion, etc. So, we are highly conformist culture in that case. Remember individualistic culture also is conformist. Human beings are by nature conformist. Even in America, they were able to have 88% conformity in that case. But in a culture like India, conformity would be just much comparatively higher. Just think of it. How many of you, just let's do a small survey here. Suppose, for example, next year, after completing the UPSC exam, after you become an IAS officer, then while making the next important decision of your life, I mean looking for a spouse, marriage, for how many of you caste will not be any factor at all? Well, when I asked this question, then a large number of students in my classroom raised their hand. Second question, for how many of you, well, language will not be any factor at all? Some hands come down. For how many of you religion will not be any factor at all? Some more hands come down. For how many of you nationality will not be any factor at all? Almost all the hands come down. Remember, Sania Mirza married a Pakistani. So, in these cases, you can say a number of students say, sir, I don't care for these things. If you like a person, then well, that's an important thing. But in real life, you can say, so I often tell my students that it might be easy for you to raise your hands sitting in a classroom like this. But in real life, it is very, very difficult. So difficult it is that you can see here, you can do some experiments sometimes. Just as an experiment, sometimes tell your parents that you want to marry somebody who does not belong to your caste. You will see on that day your life will change. So much of pressure will be there from all the sides on you that ultimately you will end up doing what your parents want you to do. I have seen many people that in their college time they are very idealistic. I don't believe in the caste and all. But when the time of marriage actually comes up, then they ultimately end up marrying the person selected by their own parents within their own caste and subcaste. I have seen many people who are born and brought up in America. 40 years ago, maybe their parents shifted to America, But even then, when the time of marriage comes up, then they come to India to look for a boy and girl of their own caste. Even if you look at the educated newspapers like the Indian Express or the Hindu, for example, if you look at the matrimonial column of these papers, you will find that, well, most of the advertisements are organized in the form of a caste in a way. Everywhere a caste will be there. So, even in such a personal, marriage is a very personal decision. You are trying to select a person with whom you are going to spend the rest of your life with. But even while doing that, you often take caste as one of the important criteria, one of the important characteristics to choose. That is what conformity is. So Indian culture is much more conformity. Conformity is valued much strongly in Indian culture than in many other Western cultures and all. So these are the 4 important factors that determine the conformity processes. Now, before we end this topic and go to the next one, well, let's take some day-to-day examples of conformity. Day-to-day life and all, because conformity, as we will see, is a very common thing again. We all are subjected to a large number of conformity pressures in our life from every direction all the time. So let's take some day-to-day example that will help you to understand how do we conceptualize the conformity. Perhaps the most common day-to-day example of conformity is the way you can see fashion operates. The way fashion operates. Fashion is a very good example of day-to-day life conformity. Just think of it. Imagine, suppose for example in 1960s and 70s, well, the film stars can say in the film stars in the Bollywood here, Mumbai film industry, Amitabh Bachchan, Vinod Khanna, etc. They used to wear a special trouser, the big, you can see that bell bottom. How does it look today? Well, if you look at it today, it looks very strange, sometimes even weird also. But do you know it was a craze among young students at that time? So question is that, why is it that the same fashion which was craze among some people at some time becomes so weird, so strange after some time? It is just because of conformity, because there are some people in our society, like the people working in the film industry, fashion industry, etc. Well, they create a certain norm of cloth, fashion, that which norm cloth is good or bad, and we blindly start adopting that, and we never realize that we are under that pressure. So the cloth that you are wearing right now, you may be thinking that it is your choice. You might have bought it yourself, the color, fashion, style, print, etc. You might have bought yourself, but chances are high that it is just a conformity pressure. If you go to the market, for example, in the clothing shop, 100 clothes are displayed, then you might end up buying that particular cloth which conforms to the current fashion of your group. Your group decides that which cloth you are going to wear, even if you don't accept that. Idea is that we are always pressurized by the group to follow the certain norm in a way. Good thing is that we blindly follow that norm. And because of the fact that we blindly follow that norm, then we don't even realize that how powerful force is acting on us. If you want to see the power of conformity, how powerful this process is, then try to do something which is against a strongly held norm in your society. One example I already gave you, that tell your parents that you want to marry somebody who does not belong to your caste. You will see that how powerful the conformity pressure can be on your life will change on that day. But perhaps many of you may not like to risk your life by doing that maybe. I can give you other suggestion also, that how can you see the power of conformity here. Particularly those of you who are boys watching this lecture, boys, the male student. So boys in this classroom, if you want to see the power of conformity, then one day do one thing, that go to your college, your university, workplace wearing a skirt. Now nobody will put you in jail. It is not illegal. Only thing that will happen is that people will look at you with a very strange and tilted eye, with a wink on their face maybe. And you can see the power of, can say, the tilted eye of the people, power of a wink, power of an eye. You will become so uncomfortable that forget about that day. For the next 5 days, you may feel uncomfortable going to that place. Two people are laughing there, you will think that they are laughing at you only. Why so? Why do you become so uncomfortable? Because a skirt is strong. There is the thing we can say skirt and women. In Ireland, men also wear a skirt. But in India, a skirt is a strongly women's cloth norm. So if you wear the skirt, then you are going strongly against a norm, such a strongly held norm. People will create such a pressure on you that ultimately you will feel so uncomfortable in that sense. Fashion is the best example of day-to-day conformity in our life. Other example of conformity day-to-day in life is the women's body image. Women's body image. That also I find very interesting. One research I was remembering, reading that in America, what was found almost 30 years, 3-4 decades ago, it was found in one research that, think of it, 70% of the girls in the late teenage and early 20s, starting from 18 years to 25 years of age, 70% of the girls of that age thought that they were overweight. Now, from where this feeling comes up that they are over 70% of the people, some of the people may have that, but 70% of the girls, from where that? Because weight is very personal, weight depends on many factors, hormonal factor, genetic factor, other biological factor, cultural factor, family factor, all these things determine the obesity, weight. But even then you can see 70% of the people thought, women in that age group, girls thought that they were overweight. Now, from where this feeling came up? Well, this feeling came up from this thing. It was found in that research further that the average weight of the women working in the film industry, Hollywood, fashion industries, etc., was found to be 55 kg. And average weight of the girls in normal society was found to be around 65 kg. Now, the normal girls in the society, they started considering that 55 kg as the norm, and they started comparing themselves with that, and which gave them the feeling that they are overweight. In India, it's not a big problem, but in America, it became such a big problem that a number of young children, young girls there in America, they started starving themselves in order to have that ideal weight. In America, in psychology now, we often recognize that as psychological disorder. We call that as anorexia nervosa. Some of you may have heard about that also, in which girls often starve themselves. They become skinny and extreme deficiency of the energy, nutrients, etc. in their body, and sometimes some of them even die for the sake of, say, having an ideal weight. That is a normative conformity extreme form further. Body image. So, what is the ideal body, for example? Ideal body, ideal shape, ideal size, etc. Well, conformity often determines that in our society. Concept of beauty, think of it. From where this idea of beauty comes up to the people? Beauty is a very cultural concept, that same person who can be extremely beautiful in Nigeria may not be beautiful in India. Somebody is beautiful in India may not be so in China or in America. From where this sense of beauty comes up? Well, that is a conformity. That society creates a norm normally one by one, slowly and slowly, and people start following that norm. And in that concept of beauty that the society creates norm, corporates today's time plays a very important role. They are, in order to sell their product, they try to create by huge advertisement campaign, etc. They try to create a beauty, for example, fair and lovely. To be lovely means to be fair. To be beautiful means to be fair, and if you use my cream, you can become fair and lovely. So they create, and because of that, a large number of girls, for example, well, they start having inferiority complex because of their complexion, fairness, unfairness, whatever you can see in that case. That can become a serious problem sometimes for some people. That is normative conformity. We don't know ourselves what is beautiful, beauty and all. We think that other people are saying is right, and we simply adopt that. Other example of conformity could be the men's body image. That also has become very important in recent times, So, I remember after that film of Shah Rukh Khan, what was that film? Om Shanti Om, when six-pack abs became very popular term. After that film, I remember more than 5-6, can say, suddenly there was a spurt in the business of gym in India. In my local neighborhood area market, 5-6 gyms were opened, high-end gyms, extremely expensive, and they are doing roaring business. What happened? Well, suddenly you can see people like Shah Rukh Khan, for example, they created a norm through the films and all, that for a man, young man, you can say it is important to have six-pack abs in order to be cool, sexy, whatever they want to be. And large number of young men started running to gyms in order to have a body like Shah Rukh Khan. Going to gym is a very good thing. That helps a lot to us in making us physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy. We have seen that in our class also. So if you go to gym in order to remain healthy, that's a great thing to do. But many of these young people, young students go to gym not in order to remain healthy, but in order to have a body like Shah Rukh Khan. And in order to have a body like that, they started abusing their own body. They start taking steroids, etc. And that has a serious consequence for their health in a way. So all of these are the examples of the, well, normative conformity in the people. Idea is that other people around us had a strong influence on our behavior. They change our behavior significantly. How do they change our behavior? They change our behavior by sometimes smiling at us, frowning at us, looking at us, not looking at us, talking to us, not talking to us, liking us, disliking us, accepting us, rejecting us, approving us, disapproving us. By doing all these things, well, other people change our behavior. We don't even realize that how and when did we change. We are the product of that thing. There is a beautiful quotation of Mark Twain, one of my favorite author. He had said that you become like 5 people you spend most of your time with. Choose them very wisely. Now that's a very interesting thing to see. You become like 5 people you spend the most of your time with. What does that mean? He says here that look at the 5 people around you most of the time. Slowly, you will become like them. Choose those people very likely. Suppose, for example, you are a very conscientious person, very organized, punctual, etc. Very clear about your morals. Now you start living among the people who are very loose about their moral standard. They keep on doing a small wrong without any botheration. Within a few months, you will see you will become just like them. Your moral standard will fall. And suppose your moral standard is not very high. You start living with some people who are very clear in their moral standard. Now, within a few months, you will see that you will become just like them. So, you will become like 5 people you spend most of your time with. Choose those 5 people very wisely because they will change you. You will never know, you will never realize that how and when did you change. You know, there is old saying, all of you know about that a man is known by the friends that he keeps. Here we will change that quotation. We will say the man is not known by the friends that he keeps. A man becomes like the friend that he keeps. Change your friend, you will also change. That is what this theory essentially tells us. So that is the idea of the normative conformity here. So very briefly, these are the facts about this concept. Then after, change the paragraph and then after write further, minority influence. Minority influence. Now write down a few lines firstly. Sometimes even the minority members of a group, sometimes even the minority members of a group sometimes even the minority members of a group may exert an influence on the majority, and change their behavior. This is called minority influence. So that is the next important thing that we would like to briefly talk about in the rest of the class today. Now what I mean here is something like this. Suppose for example there is a group, as we have seen just now, that suppose in this is a group in which most of the people follow the norm. Suppose for example there is a small group of people who do not follow these norms. They are called the minority. Who are the majority and majority are the people who always follow the norm. Minorities are the people who do not follow the norm. Norm creates the majority or minority. Now suppose there is a small group of people, minority, who does not follow the norm, then what will happen? As we have seen, that the majority puts a strong pressure on the minority. Well, how does that pressure is put? By smiling, frowning, liking, disliking, etc., etc., as we had seen just now. And because of that pressure, minority often changes according to the norm. If that happens, then of course we call that as majority influence. But sometimes in some special circumstances, which we will talk about shortly, this process might even be reversed. Suppose for example, if this is the minority, then instead of influenced by the majority, the minority starts influencing the majority in return. If that happens, then we call that as minority influence. So in every group, these two processes happen. Most often majority influence, and sometimes even the minority influence may happen. That also plays a very important role in the life of a group. So let us talk about what is that minority influence a little more. Change the paragraph and then after write further. Change the paragraph and after write further. All types of social change group change, all types of social change, group change or social reform etc. often begin with the minority influence. Often begin with the minority influence. It is often the minorities who become dissatisfied with the group norm, comma, express their displeasure and dissent against them. Then they are, one minute, dissent against them. It is they who imagine an alternative social order. It is they who imagine an alternative social order and innovate. It is they who imagine an alternative social order and innovate. Then they exert an influence. This is how the change happens. So this is the process that we have to discuss. The idea here is that in any group, if you look at it, we often say that change always begins with the minority. Majority in itself is incapable of bringing about a change. Why so? Because majority is always happy with its lot. And if you are happy with your situation, you will never change. Change always requires some amount of unhappiness, displeasure, dissatisfaction. So, it is always the minority who initiate the change by being displeased or dissatisfied or dissent against the norm. They are the ones who imagine a social order, new system. What does that mean? It is something like this. Suppose for example, this is a society that you are in, group. Suppose these are the norms that you all follow. Now everybody follows the norm initially, but there are small group of people, the minorities, they start thinking that okay, out of these norms, these two norms are not good, we will not follow them. They imagine an alternative social system that instead of having this society, let's make a new society in which other norms are same maybe, but instead of these two norms, let us have a new set of norms. And then after they exert they innovate, they imagine, they create something new, and then after they exert the majority, and if that influence is successful, then the society changes from this to that. Any change happens because of similar process. Just think of it, 300 years ago in India, sati was a norm. Sati was a norm. Now, a small group of people led by the people like Rajaram Mohan Roy, well, he started dissenting against that. He said, okay, this is a norm that we will not accept. He imagined a new society where other things are same, but sati will be replaced by something, well, banning of sati maybe, something and no norm. So, initially Rajaram Mohan Roy faced all the problems that the majority often faces. He was also ridiculed by the people, sorry, all the norms, can say, problem that minority faces. He was initially ridiculed, isolated. None other than his own mother threw him out of her home, saying that you are trying to kill Hinduism. But ultimately, but he kept on doing that, and ultimately he was able to change the norm, society. But it started with a small group of people. At one point of time in India, untouchability was a norm. A small group of people led by the people like Gandhi, etc. Well, they started, you can see, they started thinking that opposing that norm. Initially, Gandhi also faced all these problems. He was accused by many people of being anti-Hindu. But ultimately, he was able to create a new society and norms changed. So, any type of change in the society, if you think of, it often begins with the minority influence itself. Minority influence plays a very important role in changing the society. Now, this topic that we are discussing can be specifically important for you people in your case study part. Let's take one example to study this whole process. Though I will take the Rajaram Mohan Roy's example throughout this topic, Sati, Brahmo Samaj, etc. But let us take one more example here. A few years ago, there was a question in the UPSC exam. This is how you can use these ideas to write a case study type of question. There was a case study in your exam a few years ago. Case study was something like this, that one of your friend has cleared the UPSC exam. He becomes an IAS officer, and after some time he comes to you and he tells you that most of the people in bureaucracy are corrupt. Why should I remain honest? Now, as a person who knows ethics, what would you tell your friend? That was your question. Now, in that answer, you can write all the ideas of Kantian autonomy, existential freedom, choice and responsibility, etc. But the basic framework of this answer, perhaps you can write within minority influence. So, how would you write the answer to that question? Well, in your answer, you should write something like this, that I will tell my friend first of all that yes, you are right, my friend, that well, most of the people in bureaucracy are corrupt. Corruption is a norm. And that norm actually influences people to become corrupt. Again, most of the people, think of it. It is interesting to see that most of the people who joined the bureaucracy initially, they are not bad people. Remember, that was the basic premise of this theory. People are not bad. They are not bad people. They are not morally deranged people. They are not, you can say, morally corrupt people in a way. But very soon, most of them become as corrupt as anybody else. How does it happen? Tell me one thing. How many of you who are attending this lecture here, how many of you think that once you become a civil servant, that you will always remain honest, maintain your integrity, never become corrupt? When I asked this question in my classroom, majority of the students in the classroom raised their hand, sir, I will never become, you can say, corrupt. I will maintain my honesty. So, most of the people who clear the UPSC exam, they are full of that idealism that I will remain honest, I will maintain my integrity, but within a few years, most of them become as corrupt as anybody else. How does it happen? Let's try to understand that. Imagine, suppose for example, you are a very honest person, you join the bureaucracy. Now, you become an officer and you can say in your office, you will find that most of your colleagues are corrupt. But you are very clear in your intent, I am not going to be corrupt, I will maintain my honesty, integrity, etc. Initially, what will happen that people around you might start make, you can say, dismiss you. Oh, he is just a child. बच्चा है अभी ठीक हो जाएगा, हवा लगेगी थोड़े दिनों में. He will get corrected after some time. Now, to be compared like a child in this manner is not an easy thing that most people tolerate. So, in this case, well, in order to be accepted by them, well, you can say not dismissed like them, people start doing a small wrong. 10%, 15% people change at that level itself. And well, then after, well, Suppose you are a stronger person, you don't care, but let them say whatever they want to say, I have to maintain my integrity. Then after, well, the ridicule can become stronger. Suppose, for example, 10 people are sitting here. The moment you enter the room, people will look at you and laugh at you. Hey, Gandhiji has come. Let him sit here. We are to corrupt people. Now, to be compared with Gandhiji might be a great compliment, but here it is often taken as a sarcasm. Now, such sarcasm is not an easy thing for us to handle very often. So, at that point, many people, well, in order not to be mocked like this, they simply start doing what others are doing. 20-25% people change at that level. Suppose you do not. Then after, people will start isolating you, alienating you. People will stop maybe enjoying time, spending time with. Suppose, for example, 10 people are there in lunchtime, laughing, joking, enjoying, and all. You enter the room. The moment you enter the room, everybody will look at you and become quiet. You will feel yourself totally unwanted. So nobody wants to become unwanted in a group. Suppose you don't change. Even then, I don't care that whether they are laugh with me or not, I have to maintain my integrity. This isolation can become stronger. Suppose, for example, there is a party in somebody's house in your office. A whole office will be invited and you will not be invited. You will feel yourself totally left out. Or suppose there is a party in your office. You invite the whole office, nobody will turn up. You will feel yourself totally outcast in your office. And remember, you have to spend 10, 12 hours a day with these people. Almost 80% of your waking time you have to spend with these people. None of them want to talk to you, smile with you, laugh with you, enjoy with you, vacation with you, holiday with you, etc. Almost 50-60% people, 70% people change at that level. They become just like anybody just in order to party together, laugh together, enjoy together, vacation together. Suppose you don't change. Then what will happen? That this isolation can become stronger. Not isolation. People will start victimizing you. They will keep on looking for a small wrong that you may possibly do. A small wrong, which anybody can do. We are humans. To err is human, you know. So even if you do a small wrong sometime, they will find it out and they will blow that out of proportion. You will keep on running to the police and CVC and all. Sometimes they will file a false case against you, like some false sexual harassment case. So that will create a lots of trouble for you. Keep on running here and they will transfer you, not allow you to work. So because of all these factors, 60, 70, 80, 90% people change at that level. So they are not bad people. These are the normative pressure is so strong on most of these people that they might become as corrupt as anybody else within a few years of after joining the work. So in your answer to that question, you must tell your friend that, my friend, you are right that majority of the people in bureaucracy are corrupt, and that corruption is a norm which creates a normative pressure on the people, new recruits. You will be under that pressure, don't doubt about that. Tell all these things. That is how you have to write your answer. So tell your friend that you will be subjected to the normative pressure like that. Then after you can talk about the minority influence. Then after you can tell your friend that, well, majority of the people are corrupt in the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is corrupt, but that does not mean that bureaucracy has to remain corrupt. We can make an honest bureaucracy, and in order to make an honest bureaucracy, somebody has to take the first step, be a minority. So be an honest minority among a corrupt bureaucracy. Being a minority is not always wrong. Sometimes being a minority can be the actual requirement of ethics. So ethics requires us to become minority, just as Gandhi did, can say, risk being minority. Well, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Vidyasagar, Jyotiba Phule, all of them were minorities. They did face the problem of being a minority, but ultimately they were the people who changed the society. A small group of minority is the one which ultimately changes the society. So be a small group of minority, maybe in a large majority, corrupt majority, you can change that. This is what you can tell your friend. You can write the whole paragraph that I made you to write earlier. Change always begins with the minority. Then after you can write to your friend, you can tell your friend that being a minority is very important, but it is not enough. Along with being a minority, you must also be an influential minority. So there is a difference between being a minority and being an influential minority. Who are the influential minority? Well, influential minority are the one who change the majority. Do you think, for example, Rajaram Mohan Roy was the first person who opposed sati in India? Of course not. Before him also, there are many people who did not like sati, who did not practice sati. They were minorities, but they remained minorities. What was special about Rajaram Mohan Roy? He became an influential minority. Gandhi. Do you think Gandhi was the first person who opposed untouchability in India? Of course not. So many people before Gandhi also who did not like untouchability, they might remain minority, but they remained minority always. What was special about Gandhi? He became an influential minority. So that is the important thing here. So being a minority is necessary, but important, but not sufficient. Along with being a minority, you can tell your friend that he should be an influential minority also. How can you become influential minority? That is exactly what we will talk about next. So change the paragraph, then after write further. Minority influence is often stronger, is more successful. Minority influence is often more successful. Minority influence is often more successful if they fulfill the following conditions. So these conditions you have to understand. I will make you to write one line each in these conditions. You have to expand that further according to the requirement of the question. These ideas can be used in many questions like this in your exam. You can see that where and how you can. First important factor is write down consistency. Consistency. Write down further. The minority should be consistent and persistent. The minority should be consistent and persistent in their opposition to the majority. The minority should be consistent and persistent in their opposition to the majority on the core issue of dissent. On the core issue of dissent. So that is the first point. So in this point there are two things that you should note here. First of all, the minority, when you oppose the majority, then your opposition must be focused on the issue, which essentially means the norm. Issue, that is norm. So your opposition to the majority must be focused on the norm, on the issue. You should not say that majority is bad. If you say that majority is bad, you will never be able to change them. So say that majority is good, this norm is bad, which one? Raja Ram Mohan Roy, for example, when he opposed Sati, he did not say that Hindus are bad. He said Hindus are good, Sati is bad. Sati was the issue on which he has to focus on. Gandhi did not say that Hindus are bad. He says that Hindus are good, untouchability is bad. Focus must be on the issue, norm, not on the person who is following that norm. This is what Gandhi meant when he said, hate the sin, not the sinner. So sin is what? Sin is basically the bad norm. So he said that sin is a problem sinner. There is nobody called a sinner. If you remove the sin, and that is consistent with the paradigm of social influence, that there are nothing called bad people, they are only bad situation, norm in this case. So norm is problematic thing, not the person. Nobody is bad, nobody is good. Norms are good, norms are bad. Norms that we follow makes us good, norms that we don't follow makes us bad sometimes. So focus on that again. So just as Gandhi or Rajaram Mohan Roy, etc., they focused on the issue. Similarly, you can tell your friend also that he should focus only on the corruption. Don't say that bureaucrats are bad people. If you see that they are bad people, you are never going to change them. Say they are good people, they are efficient people, they are important people, they are capable people. Corruption is bad. Focus must be on the corruption, number one. Second important thing is that when we oppose them, they maintain consistency. Because remember, minority influence does not happen in a day. Majority influence can happen in 20 minutes also, as you have seen Solomon Asch experiment. But minority influence does not happen in a day. Sometimes it takes months, years, generations also. You must be persistent during that period. So focus on the issue and be persistent in that. Don't worry. Suppose for example, if I oppose you today, tomorrow if I don't oppose you, then my influence will be very less. Every time when the question comes up, I must oppose you. That is the way to be persistent and consistent, number one. Second important thing is write down consensus. Consensus. Write down further. Every member of the minority group, should always agree with each other, each other and speak in the same voice on the issue of dissent. Speak in the same voice on the issue of dissent. Now here also two points are there which you need to notice. First of all, minority group is the word I used. So when we see here that you must make a group of people. If you want to change the majority all alone single-handedly, you will never succeed. Because if you are trying to oppose the majority single-handedly, then the pressure of majority will be so strong that sometimes or the other you will break under that pressure. You must make a group of people who can support each other, who can strengthen each other at the time of our weakness. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, for example, he did not oppose Sati alone. He created a platform called Brahmo Samaj, in which he invited anybody from Hindu community, that anybody who thinks that Sati is wrong, please come to us, let us fight together. He created platform, he created a minority group, number one. And after you create a group, then after maintain a high consensus within that group. And everybody in your group must speak in the same voice. Suppose for example, if I say something and you say something else, then our influence on majority will be less. We must all speak in the same voice on that issue. So every member of Brahmo Samaj always spoke against the Sati, never in favor of that. So that is something that creates strong consensus. This is again what you can suggest to your friend also. So tell your friend first of all to make a group of minorities. Ask him to make a small group of minorities. So try to ask him to connect with the other honest officer in the bureaucracy, in the organization. It's not that honest officer do not exist. So try to talk to them, try to connect with them, try to relate with them, try to get support from them, try to work together in order to create a more honest bureaucracy in a way. So that is a way to do. And after that, we must always oppose Sati together, not all alone. That is the second important thing that a minority should do. Third important thing is write down flexibility. Flexibility. Write down firstly. The minority should not appear to be very rigid and stubborn. They should not appear to be very rigid and stubborn. They must display the flexibility and willingness to engage with the majority without compromising on the core issue of dissent. So that is the next important thing. Idea here that sometimes it happens that minority become very rigid and stubborn, that oh, everybody is bad, I'll never talk to the bad people. Don't be that rigid, don't be that stubborn. The flexibility is very important part of the minority influence in a way. So you must always be willing to engage with the majority on the issue of dissent. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, for example, when he opposed sati, he did not close his door to the Hindus. He said that anybody from Hindu community, the so-called custodian of the Hindus like Shankaracharya, etc., he invited everyone that if you think that sati is right, please come to us. Let us debate, let us talk, Shastrarth. He used to invite people for Shastrarth always about sati. So he always was willing to talk to the people, debate with the people, discuss with the people, because only through talking to them you can change them. Remember, ultimate purpose of the minority is to change the majority, not to vilify them, not to simply criticize them. The change should be the ultimate purpose, and that can happen only when you talk to them. Gandhi also said one of the basic principles of Satyagraha in Gandhi was that he says that always keep the door of communication open to your opponent. If your opponent wants to talk to you even at the middle of the night, welcome him. Never say that I will not talk to you, you are a bad person. So always be willing to talk to them, even if perhaps they have betrayed your trust a number of times in the past. Even if they have. So suppose you talk to them, your opponent does not agree with you. Trust him again. Does not can say betray your trust. He betrays your trust again. Trust him again. Never close that, okay, I will never talk to you. Now you are a bad person. So always keep your door open. Gandhi had said, there is a quotation of Gandhi. He said, best way to make somebody trustworthy is to simply trust them. Trust them, he will become trustworthy. So that is what we are. So you must always keep the door of communication open. Never close the door of communication. This is what you can tell your friend also in that corruption wala question, that I will ask my friend that always be willing to talk to the so-called corrupt people. Don't say that, yes, I will never talk to the corrupt people, never. Try to interact with them. Even if they make sometimes fun of you, they don't talk to you. If next time they try, always try to welcome them, reciprocate that. Never to close your door to the people whom you want to change. Third one is that. Fourth factor is, I don't further, fact and information, fact and reason. Fact and reason. Write down further. The minority should support their position. They should support their position with enough facts and figures. They should support their position with enough facts and figures, logic and reason, etc. Logic and reason, etc. So that is the next important thing. The idea here is that the minority must be rich in fact and reason. Remember, majority does not need fact. Majority can influence the minority just by being a majority, by liking them maybe. But minority cannot do that. So only way that minority can exert their influence is to appeal to the rationality of the people. Minority must be rich in facts and figures. That's why we often say that minority must think. Majority does not have to think. There is a beautiful quotation of Mark Twain, perhaps once again. He had said that if you find yourself in the side of the majority, then that is the time to stop and think. Are you thinking? Chances are high that you don't think. If you are in the majority, then maybe you are not thinking at all. You are just confirming blindly. So, in order, if you are in the minority, then at least one thing is guaranteed, that you think. Your thinking may be wrong, but at least you think. But in the case of majority, chances are high that you don't think. So minority has to think. The fact and reason is a very important part of the minority. Just look at Raja Ram Mohan Roy again. It is said about him that when he started opposing sati, then he had read all the ancient texts of Hindus, Ved, Upanishad, Puran, etc. From there he had gathered all the evidence that in all these ancient texts of Hindus, there was not even a single mention of sati was there. So he tried to prove to the Hindus that, well, original Hinduism did not. So there was not even a single mention of sati. Sati was not a part of the original Hinduism. It was a later distortion, and since it was a later distortion, so it is okay for us to give it up. So this is how. Not only that, he was quite well aware of the modern Western philosophy also, that was intellectual evolution that was happening in West. As I told you in some other class earlier also, he was a personal friend of Jeremy Bentham, who actually wrote a letter to him to motivate him, to ask him to, well, take a lead in making the legal reform in India as well. He was a personal friend of Bentham. He was quite well aware of the ideas of people like Voltaire, Kant, Rousseau, etc. Some great philosopher of that, John Locke, etc. He was quite well. So it is said about him that every day he used to write a pamphlet, publish that, sometimes giving each argument, one day one argument against it. Sometimes argument from the ancient Indian philosophy, sometimes argument for modern philosophy. So he used to give argument to the people to understand, to tell them that yes, you may be, so whether you talk about ancient Indian philosophy or you talk about modern, every which way Sati is wrong. So this is what is important for a mind. They must be rich in facts, and this is what you can tell your friend also, that, well, say that he must be, your friend must be rich in. Simply saying that corruption is bad is not going to have an influence. You must always give an argument, reason why do you think that, you can say the corruption is bad, and this is where you can tell your friend that Sanjeev sir's class will be helpful. Well, don't take the name, but this is where this class will be helpful. You must know ethics properly. You must give all the arguments against corruption. So all the arguments that we have: social contract argument, utilitarian argument, libertarian argument, Kantian argument, existential argument, virtue-based argument. All these arguments you can use. Some people may be convinced by utilitarian argument. Some people may be convinced by virtue argument. Use all the argument. Tell people why corruption is bad. What is wrong with the corruption? So, and let them be, you can say, decide which argument they want to be convinced by. So keep on hitting them. Well, sometimes some argument may actually hit the target and bring about a change. So be rich in fact and figure. That is the fourth one. And last, one more thing, write down further. They should be high in self-confidence and they should be high in self-confidence and social skill. They should be high in self-confidence and social skill. So as we have seen in the previous topic, that being a minority itself requires self-confidence, but being an influential minority requires a much higher level of self-confidence. So they must be high in self-confidence, number one, and number two, social skills, like for example, all the social skills that we have discussed in our class, starting from empathy, leveraging diversity, influence, communication, conflict management, leadership, building bond, even collaboration, cooperation, team capability, etc. So all those are very important skills that a civil service, you can say the minorities must have. Rajaram Mohan Roy, if you look at it, he was very high in empathy, of course, leadership, communication, influence, networking. So everything was there. Gandhi was very high in all of that. So in your answer that corruption, you can still tell your friend that, well, try to develop self-confidence and social skill. That will ultimately help you to, well, change the majority. So the finally idea is that if these 5 conditions are fulfilled, then minorities can also become successful. They can change the majority as well. That is the idea of the minority influence. So finally we can see that every group, you can say, suppose for example, as we have seen, suppose this is the majority and suppose this is the minority. As we have seen, most often what happens, that majority influences the minority and sometimes the minority may influence the majority as well. Let's call that as conformity, majority influence, or let's call that as non-conformity, minority influence. Both of these two processes operate and both of these two processes have their own role to play in the organizational, you can say in the society and all. The majority influence or conformity brings about stability in the society, and minority influence or non-conformity brings about change in the society. So the idea is that whatever is your purpose, well, depending on that, sometimes we can focus on the majority influence or sometimes we can focus on the minority influence. Just think of it, during freedom movement we wanted change. Because of that we focused on the non-conformity. civil disobedience, individual satyagraha, or you can say the quit, you can say the non-cooperation. So all of them were the non-conformity. We don't conform to the government. But after we got independence, we wanted stability in the society. So what did we do then? Well, we created all the norms, wrote it down at a place which we call the constitution of our country. Then after, every leader in India vouches for that constitutional norm. Even the opposition leaders, for example, they may oppose the government, but they still say that we conform to the constitutional norm. Because if you do not conform to the constitutional norm, then society will become chaotic after that. In order to make a stable and progressive society, it's very important that we conform to the norms. But when the norms become wrong, bad, then we may need non-conformity also. So this is what is the, you can say, process of change, process of stability, continuity and change in a society. These two processes ensure that. So that is how we can understand the two process of the thing. Now, let me take some questions before we end now. Biswajit, sir, is this cause constitutional bench made by 5 judges? Mostly, Biswajit, many of the groups are made of 5 people. Biswajit again, my friend passed CGL. During their training period, Government of India teach them ABCD rule, avoid, bypass, confused, delay. Is it ethical? Yes, it can be ethical if the purpose, so it depends on what is the meaning of that ethical. The meaning of ethical might be sometimes in order to achieve a larger goal, sometimes we can compromise, or utilitarian ethics can be there. So in that case, perhaps government also tells them to follow the utilitarian ethics maybe. Subrata, sir, integrity means the integration between our ideal self and ideal self. If someone's ideal self is with corruption, can we say that corruption will be an integrity for him? No, it cannot be ideal self, because the person who does the corruption, he also knows that corruption is wrong. That's why he tries to hide it. Had it been ideal self, then he would have been corrupt, and then after he would have been okay, say telling everyone, I am corrupt, I am following my ideal self. He cannot do that. So internally, deep down, he knows that corruption is wrong, but he tries to do that again. That's why he hides all the time. Hiding means that you are a sign of, you think that it is wrong. It is. So nobody can have a corruption as a norm. Integrity means that yes, your integrity must be stronger in the sense you must know what is right and what is wrong. So that is a problem of, you can say, integrity further. So that is all about this thing. Again, a few more topics are left which we'll discuss maybe sometimes later when class will be arranged again. So that is it for today. See you later. Oh, क्या? Oh, mic बंद